Now, on this program, we frequently expose the cesspit of hatred and vile abuse that dominates social media. And I've often said and written that it's far worse for women, far worse. The abuse is often sexualised and violent against women. It's just disgusting stuff. And no one knows this better than our very own Erin Molan, who's helped to lead the fight against cyberbullying after being a victim of online abuse herself. And tonight she takes her crusade to a new level, taking a deep dive into this sinister side of social media and what can be done to fix it in a new documentary. It's called Haters Online, Erin Molan Fights Back. It airs tonight here on Sky at 7 o'clock. Here's a sneak peek.
So when things got really, really bad last year, I just deleted the Twitter app. So I didn't shut down my account because I knew that would mean there'd be more stories about that, which would then in turn generate more abuse. And I haven't logged into it since. And one of the things that we want to do in this story is, I guess, to demonstrate just how much this stuff can damage and how hurtful it is. And what I'm going to do is log back into my Twitter account, and I feel really silly. I feel physically ill now, and it's not because I'm not resilient or not strong, but what this represents is so much pain.
I'm pleased to say Erin joins me now. Erin, that's just so powerful. I just feel such empathy for you. How horrible was it? When you logged back on, I imagine it was full of all the horrible stuff you're expecting.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Chris. I really appreciate it. And I don't know if you can see, hopefully not, but that makes me emotional watching that. And to be honest, that was never really meant to be part of the documentary. It was something that we did as almost just an experiment. And I myself wanted to see whether or not I could and what kind of feelings it would bring up. And it was just so powerful. And I think what we really want to do in this documentary is show people, warts and all, the impact that words can have. And I'm always very clear on this, and I like to make this point, particularly to our viewers on Sky News. Chris, as you'll know, they believe so much in free speech. We love robust debate. I understand that criticism is part and parcel of what we do, but the kind of hate and abuse that we are talking about are death threats, threats to rape, threats to miscarriage my child, to rape my unborn child. That's the kind of thing that I was subjected to over and over and over again. And I'd like to consider myself fairly resilient. I come from very good stock. My dad is a retired Major General, now a Senator. He is built of the toughest stuff you could ever imagine. But if it could take me to the kind of places that it took me, and it took me to some really, really dark places, I don't think I really quite realise just how dark, even at this stage of my life, but I was pretty low. I kept thinking, how can kids ever cope with what is to come, because it's only getting worse.
Erin, I know what you're talking about. I used to be on Twitter and I got sucked down that horrible path myself. The abuse, the violence of it, the way they bring in your family, it is sickening, and that's why I gave it up in the end. Essentially didn't want my family dragged through this. But I have to say, and I've written about this and spoken about it a bit, and it's certainly worse for women. I don't know whether it drags out every misogynist hiding in the dark corners of the globe or what, but would you agree with that? Women get the vile abuse, but it's sexualised and often ultra-violent, in my view.
Absolutely. I think you've nailed it. And I've always been really conscious of playing the female card, because you almost get abused for doing that even more if you say, oh, it's because I'm a woman. But I look at some of the things that have been written, and the first time that I was really subjected to this kind of thing was the first night that I ever sat on the NRL footy show, and I was part of that show for 7 or 8 years. I was the first woman to sit on that panel, and I smile when I say it because it makes me really proud, and it was an incredible period of my life and something that I'd worked really hard to do. The criticism and the abuse and the nastiness that was thrown at me off the back of that first show was not about the fact that I'd gotten anything wrong, or that my knowledge was not good enough, or that I'd gotten the terminology incorrect. It was that I was a woman. It was what I was wearing. It was that I should be raped, that I should be screwing players as opposed to talking about them. It was so sexualized, and 99% of it was to do with the fact that I was a woman. So I think you're absolutely right. I think women do tend to cop it a lot more, but families being brought in, that's really where you kind of, they're scumbags and they're cowards. And for me, the early days, I ignored it, did what everyone said to me to do, just ignore it, it doesn't matter. You know, I use social media for work, so I continue to do that, just ignore it. And then I got to the stage where I thought, no, this is ridiculous. I'm now starting to live my life differently because of what is being said to me online. I'm parking in car parks and my heart is starting to race because I'm worried that the bloke on Facebook who sent me a threat is going to show up at my car park. And I went, no, I can cop criticism, but I am not going to threat and fear for my life because of cowards who are never held to account. So I made it my job and my life's work basically up until this stage to make sure that they would be held to account and there would be consequences for that action.
Erin, what I really admire about your stance is so brave just to talk about this, and your documentary is such a brave step forward as well, but you've been leading the charge for some legislative change as well. It wouldn't have happened without you fighting strongly for this, so you've really turned it back on these anonymous bullies, and I applaud you for doing that. Yes, we all agree in free speech, but we've got, youth suicide that we're all worried about. Try and tell me that this social media stuff doesn't play a role in that. So your fight, no, Erin, is so important for so many people. And tell us just with the doco tonight, what do you come up with as potential resolutions, ways to fix this?
It's amazing, actually. And one of the things, there's a couple of things that really stood out to me in this documentary. And the first is who these people are and why they do it. Chris, it's fascinating. We have this thing in our mind of these people being losers in their mother's basement. And it almost helps victims of this abuse to cope a little bit, thinking that they're not real people, they're not smart, they're not part of society. But we reveal who the trolls are, and it will blow your mind. They are people that you work alongside every day, people who are on the boards of charities. They are respected people. It is mind-blowing. The other thing is this family that we spoke to in the UK who lost their son. Their son, Ollie, was murdered off the back of disputes that happened between 12 and 13-year-olds on social media. The documentary will help parents start conversations with their kids, and it will save lives. That's not being dramatic. It will save lives, not just from a mental health perspective, which is the biggest issue, but also from their physical well-being and welfare. This kid was murdered off the back of social media bull. That is terrifying. So there's lots of things we talk about, also with the E-Safety Commissioner and with experts about how we can stop this and how we can police this.
Brilliant stuff, Erin. Congratulations. Congratulations on how articulate you are on these issues, but also, importantly, how courageous you are. Thanks so much for joining us. 7 o'clock tonight. Don't miss it here on Sky News. Haters Online. Erin Molan Fights Back. I can't wait to see it myself.